Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to give another minute for everyone to enter the webinar here tonight. Welcome to tonight's opportunity to learn what's next in the fight to TMX, to stop the TMX Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. We're really honored to have all of you here tonight, including a lineup of powerful speakers really leading the way in this struggle against this climate destroying pipeline project. And we'll get started in just a minute. Thank you. All right. Hello again, everyone, and welcome. Tonight, we are here to discuss what is next in the struggle to stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. The last time we gathered in this way was in December, when the TMX pipeline had been put on a brief hold due to violations to workers' health and COVID-19 restrictions, and also due to continued resistance of so many, including all of us on the call tonight as panelists and guests, and those that are here to learn about this important battle in defense of Indigenous rights and for our Mother Earth. Before I go further, I would like to recognize that tonight's webinar is being broadcast from the unceded and stolen territories of the Coast Salish people, the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Coquitlam nations, of which many of us are sitting on today. I want to recognize and ask everyone to take a moment to reflect on your responsibility and on our responsibility as defenders of Mother Earth, as climate and environment activists, to the struggle for Indigenous rights, towards our responsibility to reflect on what it really means to live here in Vancouver, Canada, or anywhere that you are on Turtle Island on unceded or stolen territory of Indigenous people. As we talk tonight about pipelines, about resistance, we must also recognize that Indigenous people and land defenders are on the front lines every day against these climate destroying projects that have been imposed by the government of Canada and their multi-billion-dollar backers in the oil and gas industries. Thank you all for taking the time tonight, and especially to the panelists that are joining us. I encourage people to post in the chat to really engage with each other about building this battle and fight back, which has already been going on for more than 10 years against this destructive pipeline and in defense of our Mother Earth. And I want to invite Coast Salish Elder Kelly White, who I've learned so much from through my many years of activism here or in the United States, to please open our webinar and our discussion here tonight. Thank you. You are muted, Kelly.
Am I good now?
You're You're more than good. Welcome.
It's wild CM seat Schultz CIM. In the highest of your honor, we're thankful for Creator's blessings that those could assemble today are assembled in circle with the sun, moon, the stars, many wichoni with the water for life. Haichka CM in our language is thank you, relative seat Schultz CIM. We're grateful for the spirit within all life. This evening, especially thankful and call out thanks to the relatives, the swimmers, four-legged, ones that fly, and the ones that walk on the earth, the mind, spirit, body, and soul that are out there in the sacred bundles of our ancestors that uphold this country's confusion, the world's confusion, uphold, for the strength of our ancestors that have helped the world community, small 500 years standing up, upholding the integrity of mind, spirit, body, and soul for the right to life of all, for the small 500 years that we've been here. We thank the Indigenous people of the world, the 300 million that uphold the world's integrity of soul and the rights to life and the sacred right to life of human rights and civil rights. Appreciations and respects to the panel this evening on our different points of view that are looking at the same flame of light for the respects of water for life against the onslaught of oil and the attack of our sacred rights to life on a daily basis for the corporations superseding the sacred rights to life. In that regard, I'll borrow a song from our Winged, our Eagle song from our Lilwit Nation, and our thank you song of our Salish Nation. You can't pay for thanks and you can't pay for humble. For those that put their lives on the line daily, trying to find a semblance of justice for the honor of life, that life should be more sacred than pipelines. From our Lilwat Nation, the Eagle family, you want to bless yourself with the sunlight, the water. Take a drink for our eagles and our nations in their plight of creating justice, a semblance of justice against the pipelines, murder of all life. Chikasiam, Sitsotia, hi, Kalamia, Kashalwanka. Thank the Great Spirit for the guidance and the good light that is there for us in our weakness and our strength. Thankful for the panel strength this evening, youth, elders, men and brothers and sisters helping one another. Thankful to the Creator Spirit that helps us to communicate in a good way for the highest of the honors, healing our nations of united resistance to apathy. Thankful for Creator's blessings of the good, crucial messages shared this evening, that the blessings of the panel, the speakers, the Creator's will to put blessings on those good messages of the families and the speakers this evening. All my relations. A good session this evening. I will not be the same looking at the expertise of panels on the table this evening. Thank you, Allison and the crew, for coordinating all my relations.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. As we continue our discussion here tonight, I will introduce myself as well. My name is Allison Bodine. I am an organizer with Climate Convergence Metro Vancouver. We have organized this webinar tonight as part of ongoing work, especially during this time of pandemic and COVID-19, to make sure that we continue our constant campaigning against the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, as well as other projects that are set to destroy Mother Earth, and to other projects that put the interests of profit far above those of people and of health. In the period since the pandemic started, the 1 year, a lot of people's lives have completely changed and been upended. Of course, most marginalized, Indigenous, Black, people of color have felt the brunt of this mismanagement on the part of the Government of Canada towards the COVID-19 crisis and the healthcare crisis. We see that massive construction projects have continued across the province at a time when public health and safety was saying that we couldn't gather outside in large groups. Yet hundreds of workers were allowed to continue work on the Site C Dam, begin work on the TMX pipeline, and continue their work on the CGL natural gas pipeline in Wet'suwet'en. We see where the real priorities of the Government of Canada lie, and it is not with people fighting for our basic right to health, for clean air and water, but we've continued organizing. We have continued in all forms, especially since January. We started the year of January much the same as December ended. People were still putting health and safety first, but we began to see more and more work being done on a Trans Mountain Pipeline. And we saw that, and we knew it was happening because people have been organizing and are on the ground. And we immediately saw many more people coming together in different forms of protest against the Trans Mountain Pipeline. And tonight we just wanted to pull people together again to find out the different ways to get involved and to support the important work that was happening. So we have a really incredible and powerful panel of people that are going to pull this together and talk about how we can stop once and for all this $20 billion taxpayer-funded project that completely tramples on Indigenous rights and sovereignty, while at the same time will pump hundreds of thousands of tons of greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. All under, of course, we can't forget, Justin Trudeau, the so-called climate leader. So I look forward to hearing from you all, to uniting and to continue organizing. And I encourage people, if you have questions, we will take them at the end. You can go ahead and use the Q&A feature or the chat. I can watch both, and we'll get started for here tonight. So for those that were not able to make it, in order to witness and support the important reaction of the Braided Warriors, Indigenous youth and land defenders to the charges and the sentencing of Stacey Gallagher, who we're here to hear from tonight. I wanted to just get a bit of the flavor of that and share it with people through an AJ or Al Jazeera Plus video that was made about the TMX pipeline and about Stacey's case. And then I'll go ahead and welcome Stacey Gallagher to the floor. So just a few minutes of your patience and I'll get the video started.
And release of our people! Free them now! And release of our people!
Thank you, everyone. I'll now welcome Stacey Gallagher to the floor, virtual floor. Stacey is an Indigenous land defender currently fighting a 90-day prison sentence for holding a ceremony to oppose the TMX pipeline. For anyone on the call that does not know Stacey and has not had the honor of meeting him in person and really hearing his uniting voice and energy, we all know how deeply unjust the sentence is. And Stacey, it would be great if you could give us an update about your case and how we can support as part of your words tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, Anine, I would like to introduce somebody first. Say hello, Anine.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rita Wong. Pleasure to be here with you all.
Chimiquich. I'm never to speak before life givers. I'm not to ever speak before the host nations. And before we did this today, I was asked to speak first, and I asked the life givers if it was okay with them. Just part of my teachings. I'm never to walk in front of a woman. What if I'm having a bad day? Who am I for them to pick up that medicine and take that from me? But I want to say, Anin Buju Gichimanadu. My name is Gichimakwa Makwa Indodama Nishanabe. Chimigwich, Mishomis and Nukamis and the Chibais, my ancestors, and the elements and the medicines and the animals that were seated here before me as a Anishinaabe, just a person of the land. I am honored to have been born here, but I'm a guest. My grandmother's come from a beautiful place, Cutler, Serpent River, Ontario, and we follow the milk line, not the matriarchal line. So that's where I'm from. And as I'm to be the very best relative I can when I'm on these lands, even though I'm from Turtle Island, I'm a guest here. Because at any time, if I misbehave, I could be asked to leave. And I believe in this so much that I would leave. And so all that I am doing is listening to the grandmothers of these territories. I'm not to bring on any of my teachings or tell people what to do. I'm just following the natural laws. I'm trying to be a good boy. I'm just trying to be a good boy. That was quite moving seeing that video. While that was going on, I was on a vision quest. They put me into their prison system, and they were telling me that they were going to release me the next day, and I told them to get out of my cell, that I was in ceremony. I was going on a vision quest because for me, what else should you do when they incarcerate all my relatives? Make the best of it. But that video just brought tears to me because those are my dear nieces and nephews, and I was with them a couple of weeks prior to that when about 70 police officers they kicked the shit out of us. That's what they did. They, not just did they pull their hair, but they were choking them out and kicking them. And I saw one loading up to punch a youth, and there was cuts and bruises, and it was just Indigenous youth, and me and a cousin, Veronica. And we know that this happens all the time because every time that we do these things alone as the original people of these lands, well, they kill us. They've always killed us. And so I want to thank everybody from all the, the human family for when we come together, because we all protect each other. We all protect each other. We know that, other people of European descent, this stuff won't happen to. We've seen it for 7 generations. So we're thankful that when we engage with each other as what has been seen, we don't call it prophecies. That's somebody else's language. It was seen when the whole human family gets together, and out of this comes a new spirituality or a reawakening or reconnecting. So, it was quite moving to watch that. I did not know at the time that was going on. I don't get Netflix in a solitary confinement. They keep you in there for 23 hours a day in a darkened room. They feed you literally bread and water, but I'm okay. I've got prayers, right? I got millions of ancestors, and those that I will never meet are praying for me. And that's who I do the work for. It's for the ancestors that I'll never meet. And that is the salmon nations and the trees and the eagles and the medicines and the elements and the human family. So this is who I take direction from. It's got nothing to do with me. I'm going to be going to jail all my life. I've realized that if this is their system and they're going to criminalize me for this, I will not stop following the natural laws that sits, I'll say, inside of everybody. Their ways, or whatever that is, that man's ways, it's new coming here. And if I didn't follow the natural ways, I'll say I would be sick. I would get sick. That's happening just on the human family that think of monetary things more than all of our relations. But I'm appealing. I'm gonna go right to creation on this one. I'm appealing all the way. I don't know what these words rights are. I don't believe in rights. I know that I have a responsibility to care. Just to care. And while I'm on these lands, I'm just to care. And I'll take it all the way to their what Supreme, Canada Supreme Court, supremacist court, and I'll take it to this United Nations, whatever that means too. These rights and stuff, I have responsibilities, and I'll take it as far as I can. And yeah, no more lawyers. There's other ways to do things. The lawyers are still in their system. My mom said when this first happened, she's 87. She doesn't understand this system. She says, well, son, maybe you have to start teaching them and be gentle with them because they're sick. So I tried that in court, and I just felt a lot of racism and biased and, well, the status quo coming from this corporation of Canada. So, yeah, so I'm on an appeal right now of 90 days. And, I know that through the blood memory of my ancestors, that everything that will be fine. I just can't go into their system with their rules. I tried that, and yeah, it's rigged. I'm not going to win in their system, but maybe I could be helpful. Oh, as Miss White there, I wanted to say Chimigwich in my language for putting sharing those words and putting that onto my spirit was very calming, those songs. And I'm to speak like that when I'm in court to try to save something from the ancestors to land on them. Yeah, I'm sick of talking about court. Been in there for 2 years. I would like to discuss anything that anybody has creative about actually stopping this black snake, because this has nothing to do about me. It's not about poor Stacy going to jail. It's for me. I've mentioned before that I'm a continuation of a prayer. I'm a prayer. 7 generations ago, all of our ancestors, they took it hard. They took it hard. I've got a good life, and I don't want my daughter's children to ever have to go through this. So whatever it is that I need to do, but I'll do it in a gentle way, and I will send love back to those that have sick, that are sick. If our children were sick in the hospital, we wouldn't berate them. I'm not going to berate the RCMP or these men for their behaviors. I got to talk to them with kindness, because that's what is expected of me from the female aspect, from my grandmothers. So court is court. I'll be going through it for the rest of my life. But I just want to mention to those people that don't have any fears. There's no such thing as fear when you're full of love. Sure, they're threatening us with time in jail, especially during COVID. I don't know. My grandchildren will ask me, and these are the ones I'll never meet. They'll say, "Grandfather, did you do everything that you possibly can?" And I'm praying that I'll be able to say yes, that I did everything I can, my relations, so that you don't have to walk around with cancerous sores and, trying to chase down some drinkable water. And if that means getting arrested, actually being on the front line, I know where the front line is for me. It's on Shelmont. It's not in the middle of the city. It's not over on top of a bridge. I'm sorry if I'm going to hurt anybody's feeling here, but I know where our standing rock is. It's on Burnaby Mountain. So if anybody would like to join me and go up there and do something about it, I'm good. I'm good for that, right? I'm getting a little tired of all these, pardon me, banner drops and blocking traffic and all that. And I've been talking to our elders, and we've been waiting 7 generations for the rest of our human family to and I think we're close. I think we're close. But I'm going to in a couple of seconds leave my phone number. CSIS has it if you don't write it down correctly. And if there's anything that you ask of me, you've heard me mention this before, that give me a call. I'll support you in whatever it is. I know that we all have different ways of doing things. I heard it's supposed to be equal. Okay, I'll go with that. It's all equal. That mother that's taking care of this child in this time, why wouldn't that be above or equal to, say, me pestering some pipeline people? So the people that can't make it to these things, you sending your prayers or good intentions is just as equal. So everything that we do is equal. And so my phone number is 778-389-9857. And now that we've done that, everybody get your cards out and your bingo dabbers. We're going to play some good old fashioned bingo. So I'll leave it at there. I'm very grateful that we're all here. I'd like to hear the women talk, the life givers talk, because those are my teachers. Chimi Gwitch, all my relations. Oh, Rita wants to mention something.
Yeah, just everybody has gifts to offer in this journey to protect the land. And for those who are creative or artistic, we invite you to send your art to 1308trees.ca. We would like to compile all the art and the poetry and letters for the trees and send them to the local municipalities and First Nations. Yeah, and just to acknowledge that the work takes place on many fronts, and with the braided warriors going after the financial aspect. And last night we heard a really wonderful webinar with climate justice 350 in terms of divestment. You know, there's a lot of work to do in terms of divesting and also educating our loved ones as well as those who don't agree with us. I just want to say what an honor it is to be on this call with Kelly White and all the speakers. I just want to also thank Kaya George and her family for their incredible work. You know, some of us, many of us actually have been up at the Coast Salish Watch House for the last 3 years. And it's the vision of Kaya's ancestors, of Chief Dan George, of Leonard George, of the many who come before, that we stand on the shoulders of giants in our efforts to become better relations with the Indigenous peoples of this land. So just want to thank everybody.
How was that? That was good. Thank you, honey. Okay, all my relations, let me quite sure, just stay in prayer.
Thank you, Stacey Gallagher, and thank you, Rita, also for sharing. Both strong fighters in defense of the planet for a very long time. The website 1308trees.ca is in reference especially to the main work of so-called construction on this pipeline project in the Lower Mainland right now is the cutting down of trees to make way for the pipeline and the expansion of Trans Mountain. And this, of course, disturbs valuable habitat and ecosystems, which Maureen will go more into later. But I'll just say that the trees are being cut down without the permission of the municipal governments. They've actually, Trans Mountain asked and demanded of the federal government that they not be required to follow municipal bylaws, and have trampled right on that demands by municipal governments as well as the Indigenous people, rightful owners of the land, in order to begin cutting down these 1,308 trees. So I encourage people to look at that website. So to go on next, it is an honor for me to introduce someone I haven't ever met in person, but I hope to someday. Kaya George is here with us today. A young Indigenous leader, a scholar, and activist of the Tulalip and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Kaya has worked with Sacred Trust and Greenpeace and traveled globally speaking on Indigenous and environmental issues. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Hot Squile Tanoya, Pathlia, Queen Kushamin, Kaya George, Queen Sna, Tanachinkla, Dachlelip, Tanachinkla, Tsleil-Waututh. I want to thank Kelly White for that song earlier. That was really beautiful and it really touched my heart. Also for the words you spoke. It's always good to hear one of my elders speaking the language too. That really inspires me, and it originally inspired me to try and learn as much of my language as I can. And yeah, thank you for that. And also Stacey, it's always good to see you, you rascal. Thank you for being a good example for what it looks like to be, as you say, a guest on these lands, and we call you our relative here. You've been a part of my ceremony family for a long time now, and providing that example of what it looks like to obey, or not just obey isn't the right word, but to follow and honor and respect the laws, the true laws of these land, the true laws of these waters and these coasts, the true laws of the people that have been here, the natural law and the sacred law that's been here since time immemorial. And that's the moral one too, to follow. And as we talk about what's it gonna look, what's the solution for all of this? What's the solution for all this disaster that's happening, for all this environmental degradation? Because you don't need me to say it, you've probably heard it, everybody's heard it 100 times. We're in danger right now. Our future generations. There's a lot of people already feeling these impacts of what we've had from just overconsumption and greed and capital capitalism and patriarchy and colonization, all of these things that have been affecting our lives. If it hasn't yet, it will. We were all here because we realize it's important to protect our land and protect this earth, not just for us, but for future generations. And so as we move forward, the first thing that comes to my mind as a solution is just simply by abiding by and respecting the sacred and natural law of these lands, because they know how, the people, and that ties back into land back and what that looks like, and and people always ask, but what is that going to look like then? If that's the solution, is listening to the original landowner, not owners, there isn't quite the right word in English for that relationship, that reciprocal relationship that the people have tied to this land, that they love this land, that we love this land more than anything. So owner isn't the right word, but land, the children of this land. And it's because it should be put back into the trust and into the care of us and into the care of them, because we know what to do with it. They all do, the ancestors did since time immemorial. As my dad and my always say, our sacred law is what we live and abide by, no matter what. No matter what, that's always going to be in the back of our minds, is every decision that's made, how is it going to look for not only our children, but for the world's children 7 generations down the line? Is this pipeline going to be good for our future generations, 7 generations down the line? Not just ours, but for all of our communities, all of our neighbors, all of the people in BC and in the world. And the answer is no. And it's always been no since the beginning. Since we first found out about it, Tsleil-Waututh has been fighting against this pipeline for most of my life now. I've been saying half my life for a while, but it's coming to a point where we've been fighting this for about most of my life. Ever since it came to us, I remember my dad telling me, well, they want to do this and they say it's good for the economy. It's going to bring a lot of money. It's going to bring a lot of jobs. And that's what they say about this. And they say it's going to be good for us, good for the people. But I think we know better. And since then, it was 100% consensus no on my community, that we're not only going to say no, but we're going to actively fight against it. And we're going to do this for all of us and for all of you too. And that was what Tsleil-Waututh decided to do. And they created a 1,200-page assessment. And I have some notes here. I was asking my dad about it. I was like, so what does this look like? And he said, well, this has looked like we've had programs, elk reintroduction programs. The first time in 100 years, elk are back in our territory. And we've been cleaning the inlet. And for the first time in 40 years, we did a clam harvest. My dad was telling me, he was like, we haven't dug out clams from our inlet since I was a little kid. And now I get to see my great nieces and nephews able to do that again. And that's from carefully monitoring and watching the waters and keeping it clean. And the salmon enhancement programs, using old and ancient techniques to create spawning beds. And throughout all these things, it's abiding by the Coast Salish law of truth, family, health, and culture. Our law it's wrapped up into natural law and in our spirituality and in the culture of who we are. And that's what it'll always be. There's not any amount of money that'll change that. There's not anything that'll shake that. We're always going to care for this land, and we're always going to care for these waters, no matter what comes our way. And in times it seemed like a David and Goliath fight, but it isn't, because we have, I feel like we have the heart and the spirit to keep fighting. And more than anything, we have the love to keep fighting. And more, every single year, more and more people keep realizing that. And we have more and more people understanding and coming to be on our side and fight with us. And so with that, I ask people to come join us at the Watch House when the time is right for ceremony, and to come join and support and uplift those voices whenever and wherever possible, to acknowledge, go beyond just acknowledging the original people of this land, but learning more about it and supporting them as well. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kaya, for joining us tonight. You really made me think about, this struggle against Trans Mountain Pipeline has been happening for 10 years at least, but really we're walking all the time on the shoulders of people that have been fighting for 500 years as we organize here in where we are today. And so I think it's something that we have to keep in mind, that our united actions today, the way that we walk and the way we work with each other, is all has to be informed by that. And so I hope we will be able to come together soon in a safe way, and in recognition of everyone's different needs and abilities to go outside right now. I really appreciate your joining us here tonight. And also to say, I think that we also should draw strength from the fight against Line 3 that's happening right now in the US, and just how, and the victorious fight against the Keystone XL pipeline. These are all struggles that have been united across this border that separates the United States and Canada, and your work has also just really broken through that man-made border and shown how important our organizing together is. So thank you. The next speaker I have is Maureen. Maureen Curran is here representing Protect the Planet, Stop TMX. She spent many days and nights in treetop camps in the path of the TMX pipeline construction, is here to give us an update on that and the different ways that people can get involved, and some important recent discoveries made in the path of the pipeline. So Maureen, you should be able to share your screen and everything. Let me know if there's anything else you need, and welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here tonight. I really appreciate getting to follow such illustrious leaders. I do feel like a lot of the journey that I've had here has been an amazing chance to reconnect and appreciate and learn more, and keep trying to learn and be the best, I guess, ally as best I can, and to be reconnected with all the things that we have lost, because the colonizers here are the ones who need to decolonize as much as anyone. We are broken. We have broken ourselves as well as breaking other people. We have lost our own lights. And when I hear your song, Kelly, it speaks to my heart, and it speaks to the things that my people have forgotten. My ancestors once upon a time came from Ireland, where we worshipped the trees and the groves, and we knew that we were at one with everything around us, and we had words for that in our language that have all been lost and forgotten too. And those are things we need to rebuild and regrow, and you are leading the way, and I thank you so much for that. It means a lot. I would like to be able to share, I'm going to share some pictures of the camp where I've been, has become my new home away from home, with lots of people. I am just one person here who represents this group. It is a family that I think has come together. This was sort of the outside. All the garbage is there because these were things that we were pulling out of the bush. Again, our sad state of our society is that we disrespect ourselves, and by disrespecting our land, the land that we live on, that is the stolen, unceded land that we have taken over and seem to treat like it's our toilet or garbage dump all the time, and we've forgotten what the importance of everything is. So this is what it looked like on the inside. And that's me up in the tree back in August when I first started this journey. And I got pulled into helping out through a call out from Dogwood. So for all of you who are sitting here watching about this, I was you, and you could be part of this. This is not anything that is outside the reach of every person who's at home. Reach inside your heart, as Stacey would say, and see what is calling to you and where it is that you belong in this fight, because we all need you. We need you shoulder to shoulder with us to make this work. And I am so glad that I have, like I said, found this family here. So unfortunately, this is what that area now looks like, or in fact, it's gotten worse. This was a few weeks ago. So where I was in the tree has been already taken, a lot of it has been taken down. Just behind this white arm is where the trees are that I was camped in. And like I said on there, I was the fourth person. So I was, again, following the leader. We all have so many good people to learn from in this journey. So over on the left, there's North Road. So where this area here is in Burnaby, but across the street is Coquitlam, and just down the hill is New Westminster, just to be able to situate yourself in our colonial terms. The Brunette River is behind, and this ridge right here goes down, and that's Holmes Creek. Well, it's a stream that leads into Holmes Creek, which is a little further over. It's all part of the same watershed. So here is the map, and as you can see, this black arrow shows this is where they want to be putting the pipe, and where why they're taking down the trees in that area. The 1308 that was being referred to is only the trees that are above a certain size, a 20-centimeter diameter. So there's actually many thousands of trees, and that's just in Burnaby. Obviously, this pipeline is crossing 2 provinces and many, many territories, and it's damaging every community that it goes through. So when that other camp was attacked, we had to show resilience and come back. We did. This is Lost Creek. And if you see in the background behind the pipe, there's a little orange tarp. That's the new tree sit. Some of the pictures here show, sort of gives you a little bit of a feeling for what it looks like to be up there, looking down. And then the one that says Stop TMX is a picture taken from the Trans-Canada Highway, looking out, just to get a little bit of a feel. And that's our wonderful Timothy, who did a lot of the building, who's up there, just to give you some perspective. And it's now going to be, we're hitting our 100th day on Friday. We will have been occupying this tree set for 100 days at the end of this week. Thank you to everybody who has made that possible. It's been a lot of work. So how can you get involved? Perhaps you're someone who can climb a tree, and perhaps you're not, but that doesn't, there's, as I was saying, a job for everybody. We've got a lot of things going on. Our beautiful little picture up at the top shows that we have had people who are bird watchers who have discovered that there's some hummingbird nests. We are trying to use that legislation, that Endangered Species Act and Migratory Birds Acts and so on, to try and protect those beautiful little nests. One of them is only 6 meters away from where they were doing cutting, and technically the rules suggest that you're not supposed to do any cutting or work within 15 meters. So because they could plead ignorance, they were allowed to do it. We've since had these nests registered. So now it's just a question of trying to see, can it be enforced? We know that many, many times the DFO has, and whether it's municipal laws, provincial laws, federal laws, all of these rules and regulations have been cast aside in this idea of the national interest, which really isn't national interest at all, because we know we are all part of the nations. The hummingbird is part of our nations. We are all connected, and in the interest of everything, this pipeline is way down at the bottom. It's only in the interest of a few oil executives. So how can we reframe that to electorate? So there's a number of ways. This is one of our bird watchers who's looking up and peering up at the area. So if you're interested in the bird watching and taking part in that and finding more nests and keeping track of them, we have a special email that you can contact We also have had a lot of actions from our prayer circle. They've been amazing at using, again, nonviolence and peaceful protests to block gates and bring attention and to what is going on. We have had direct action and people actually locking onto machinery. We've had leaflets and trying to educate our neighbors and getting them encouraged to take action and try and convince them that it's not too late. We have had a number of whether it's marches and sign waving, banner drops, things to try and pull more people in and get more people paying attention, trying to catch the media in particular. And also just to get it back in the, well, particularly for media, we know that there's a very high likelihood of an election coming up, and we want this to be an election issue. We don't trust our politicians to act on this, but we know that down in the South, Biden was the one who stopped one of the pipelines. We just need more people like that, and we need to make it impossible for them to say no. And that's our job, because yeah, the politicians are clearly, most of them are not very trustworthy, unfortunately. We've been doing tours and outreach. So all of these are things that anybody can take part in, right? Whether, so a lot of these are more active. We also have things like we will, obviously super active. We definitely need more tree sitters. There are right now 6 or 7 of us who are trained to go up. But a lot of people like me, I'm also trying to hold down my job, so I can only do 2 days here and 2 days there. We also need people who, if you can't climb, we need you to take in food and drop food, warm food off and tea for the tree sitters. And that requires being, you know, courageous enough to walk past the security, to brave the fact that sometimes the CN or BNSF, that's the American Railway that has rights to go in there and harass us, will show up and try and give you tickets, which so far we haven't had to actually pay, because we've always managed to show that we're not doing anything that's actually in the way of their work, which is what they're allowed to ticket. But they're doing it intimidation tactics, and it's been escalating. We've been seeing that a lot. No one's, well, unfortunately, the fellow, if you in the picture just back here, did get quite hurt because he had latched on to one of that big tank thing, and 5 security guards ripped him off of it rather than calling the police, and bruised him quite severely. So we know that even with our white privilege and the fact that they don't treat us with the same, certainly don't treat us with respect, we don't, we know we don't suffer the same level of discrimination that our Indigenous allies do, but we're doing our best to try and continue to draw attention to this and use our privilege to put ourselves out there, whether it means just being the body in the tree, in the way of the pipeline. That's a huge, it is a huge thing that's holding them up, right? It took them 5 days to dismantle our last one, which they did manage to get at. We're making sure this one is not going down without a bigger fight, so they know that they're going to really struggle to get rid of us. And the more support we get from you, the harder that is for them, right? It really is about making sure that they know that for every one person they see here, there's hundreds out there that are watching, and that are keeping an eye on that. That does protect us a lot. So yeah, if you're interested in being involved in any of these things, also, even if you can't leave, you say, I'm housebound right now, it's COVID still, I can't get out. We need people to help out with web pages. Not just that with the 1308 trees one, as well as with our own. So if you're interested, the Protect the Planet one down at the bottom also has a form on it saying that you can just type yourself into that form and say, I'd like to help out, and these are some things I could do. Who do I get in touch with? We will have someone reach out to you. We need people who are willing to talk to the media or help write press releases. We need more coordinators, because if we have more people coordinating, we can run more things. We can get out there more often. We can be on that Brunette Greenway every single weekend, hitting people with flyers, getting people to sign up, convincing people that stand up and demand that this be stopped. Because we know that the public in general is in favor of real action on climate change. but they've been sold this, oh, we can't, or maybe later, or they're just given up because they feel like, well, even though we keep asking for it, nobody's actually doing anything, and we need to convince them not to. That requires everybody putting in their shoulder in and constantly, talking it up and making it an issue. That happens all the time. So here are the ways you can reach us. That's our email at the top. If you email that, like I said, with just a general, whether it's a general question like I want to help, but I don't know how, what could I do? We'll get back to you. If you email saying this is what I can do, who do I talk to? We will give you the right person to talk to. If you prefer to reach us on Facebook, you can use the messaging there. And if you can't actually afford any time right now to get involved, but you want to be able to help out, we also have fundraising for a legal case trying to challenge the injunction that's stopping people from protesting. It's extremely frustrating to realize that our courts are being used against, as we were just saying, against all natural laws. We know that human rights, the rights to drinking water, the rights to clean air, the right to have, and the rights of our four-legged friends, of our winged friends, of our relations that are even the trees. Like, you can't spend the time in the trees like I do without starting to feel like we have an affinity. We get to know each other. We talk together, and I hear them, knowing that I'm putting out what I can for them and for my own kids. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids, and I listen to Kaya and her generation, and I'm appalled, right? As a parent, you don't leave a toxic legacy for your children. No good parent does that. So all of us who are parents need to stand up and demand that this get fixed, because we don't want to hand this mess to our children and grandchildren. It is just wrong. So here are, hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that, and I can put some of it in the chat too if we need to help you out. I also want to say thank you to all the support that we've had. We wouldn't be where we are without all our allies and the connections that we've built. Hopefully we do our best to try and support them, and we know that they have meant so much to us, and we wouldn't be where we are now without them. So I think, and that is
Sounds good.
so.
Thank you very much, Maureen. So again, if people have questions, put them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end, or anything specific. I'm sure you could type it and Maureen or someone will respond. There'll also be some links going in about the resources that were shared, including the brochure. I'll paste in a second. I just wanted to recognize that Jane has joined us from the struggle happening at the Colony Farms, where TMX is laying down pipe in preparation for construction. So Jane Thompson, a member of the Colony Farm Park Association, who's very active and leading in the fight to protect the park from being used as a TMX construction yard. It would be great if you could share some updates with us and how we can continue supporting that important struggle. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Allison. And I just want to say thanks to everybody who joined us on March 7th, where we held a protest outside of the entrance of Colony Farm Regional Park on low heat. It's very unusual to have such a protest in that area, and we had just over 100 people, and thanks so much to Climate Convergence for coming out and helping out, and it was very the response we received from the traffic was quite it helped us, give us a lot of energy, and a lot of people have a lot of energy, because it was lots and lots of honks, even from big trucks, like and the train. And so it was, we know we have a lot of support to stop the Trans Mountain Pipeline in that area, and certainly a lot of people appalled to find out that the trails are now closed in one section of Colony Farm Regional Park, that the public can no longer access. So in fact, the day or two after March 7th was when the fences started going up, and we now cannot access that portion of the park. As I think everyone here is likely aware, the Colony Farm Regional Park is on the unceded and traditional territory of the Coquitlam First Nation. I was in touch with their chief before we held the protest. Some of you, or maybe all of you, are aware that they have their own agreements with Trans Mountain, and we want to remain respectful because we are on their unceded lands. But they did say to go ahead with our protest, and they understand what it is we're trying to achieve. So that we did get an okay to do that. But in terms of Coquitlam First Nation wanting to join in our protest or that kind of work, they have respectfully declined. In terms of what's next, my report isn't going to be that exciting right now, but trust me that in about a week's time, it will be a lot more exciting. We're working on something that I want to ensure we get everything in place before reaching out for public's help or to make any sort of announcements, just in case it falls on the wrong ears. But hopefully enough said that there are efforts in the works for some more action, and hopefully in about a week's time. In the meantime, I am receiving the environmental reports on a daily basis from the contractor that was hired by Metro Vancouver. I know that they're doing a lot of, unfortunately, it's so sad. I mean, they're taking even red-legged frog egg masses and moving them, and doing sweeps for the Oregon forest snail, looking for bird nests and such. We're keeping our own eyes on everything as well from a distance to see what we can do with and finding our own nests and or other animal species that have already arrived. I'm sure most of you know too that this is an area that is home to there's over 200 migratory birds, or no, I shouldn't say that. There are over 200 bird species that call Colony Farm Regional Park home. A lot of them are migratory birds, and I believe the wrens are already starting to make their nests in that exact area. And so things that we're keeping an eye on in hopes of stopping it that way as well. So save it to say that, like I say, my report next week, or I know we won't be meeting, but should have some exciting updates to fill you in on then. Just using this time to carefully plan and collaborate with others so that we can do everything we can to not just stop it in the park, but stop the pipeline as a whole. And yeah, I know it's vague, but that's all I can really say at this point. But do know that we are really working hard to come up with everything we can to help stop this horrible project from happening. Oh, and another positive thing, we have over 17,500 people who have signed our petition, which means we also have contacts now for over 17,000 people. So we have grown our relationships well. And I think when, there are these kinds of events or things that you want us to share with because I think because the petition's under Colony Farm Regional Park, I have access to all those contacts. But if we want to collaborate on messaging on a regular basis or once a week, I can put something together so that it's not just about that particular area, but also Maureen, I obviously was listening closely and writing some notes about what you had to say. I can draft something that could go out to these 17,000 folks and run it by you to see if that works for some messaging for Burnaby area as well. And anything anyone wants to contribute into that sort of weekly update we send out, I'm more than happy to do that. That's where that's at. I mean, and I know you're all in the same boat, but I mean, our board of directors is me and a few other people that, are senior citizens, and We were normally doing our birding walks, so this has come out of just nowhere, where we're now changing course. Where we normally be doing a birding for beginners course, we're putting a lot of effort into trying to stop the pipeline with very few resources. But thanks to all of you and Climate Convergence, it's just been so, and the people in Burnaby, so inspiring and helpful to learn what we can do to stop it as well. Thanks so much, Allison.
Thank you, Jane. No, that's despite your warning, it's all very exciting. I think whatever support you need, we are on alert, and Climate Convergence will be ready to mobilize people in whatever capacity in the coming period. And also, just if you need help with the newsletter or anything, I think being able to reach out to those 17,000 people would make a big impact. Being at Colony Farms the other week, I think really reminded me, at least, how much support we have for our stand against the TMX pipeline, but how much people need to know how they can get involved or how they can help. And that's a lot of what we're trying to work together to do today, and what Climate Convergence has been doing to keep up a consistent and constant campaign against TMX, so that people know there's a way to get involved and that we're not alone in this struggle. So thank you so much for that reminder and for being here today. So we have one more speaker before we go into our final, maybe some question and answers, and just ending our discussion here tonight in our update. I want to invite Thomas Davies. He's a founding member of Climate Convergence. He's a unionized pipe fitter and power engineer, and author of System Change, Not Climate Change, a book from Battle of Ideas Press, which came out in 2019, which I will post in the chat about how you can get your hands on one. But welcome, Thomas. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out tonight to the third webinar we've done. It seems like this is kind of a every month or two webinar that we're going to have to keep on doing, because the situation with the opposition to TMX is so important and so dynamic, and the situation is at such a kind of critical point. So thank you very much, everybody who's continuing to stay engaged in this and getting more involved in this. And thank you so much to everybody who spoke before me. I can say without exaggeration that I've learned important lessons from every single one of the speakers, not just what they said tonight, but just seeing how they approach organizing, how they prioritize organizing in between a lot of other different things. And also, I was taking a look through the members, people who'd logged on, the participants today, and I see so many people who've been fighting for so long and who've made so many sacrifices and continued organizing. So many people who not just come to rallies, but organized rallies. So many people who've been arrested, who like every single thing that we post on Facebook and are always there and so engaged in this issue, and have been engaged in the opposition to first the Kinder Morgan pipeline and now called the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. Yeah, it's really, I think we're a good representation of an important part of humanity, and we're proving wrong all the cynics who say this pipeline will be built in the first place, and then who justify the way that the world is saying this is the best that humans can accomplish. And we're inherently arrogant, and we're inherently competitive, and we're inherently at war with each other. And I think through our actions, we prove the opposite, and we're setting a really good example. Yeah, that's a good pitch. You can see Jane's daughter. And that's one of the big reasons why we're doing this. I was trying to get ready to talk today, and I was going back over the fight, and I picked some kind of, I think we're so in the middle of it, like Kinder Morgan is, or Trans Mountain is, the pipeline is really in our backyards. For many of us, it's like actually blocks away from where we live. and where many of us play and work and all of those things. So we're getting to experience that for the first time, what Indigenous nations and oppressed people and have experienced very directly for so long. And I went through some of the kind of key points because we need to remember this isn't just something that we've been fighting for the last 6 months. And I think there's some important lessons we can learn from basically the last almost 10 years of organizing. It was 2013 in December when Kinder Morgan applied to build the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. In November of 2014 was the big standoff on Burnaby Mountain where Kinder Morgan was trying to do some exploratory drilling by the park, and there was huge standoff, many arrests. In November, it was super cold, but people were camping out and coming up there in the hundreds every day. That's when Kinder Morgan got an injunction against the protesters, tried to put slap suits and target people who had been organizing and leading protests. And eventually all those charges were dropped. September 2016 was a huge rally, 20,000 people in Vancouver that was organized like under the name of Climate Convergence, but was organized in collaboration. Like it was this really huge effort that was organized between so many groups and individuals, leading up to what we thought was going to be the decision, Trudeau, whether or not to approve the pipeline. In November of 2016, Trudeau did approve the pipeline despite the huge support of people, or this is a huge opposition of people speaking out against it. In January of 2017, the BC Liberal government issued the necessary environmental certificates for the pipeline to continue. Then in June of 2017, the NDP government was elected and promised to use every tool in the toolbox to stop the pipeline. In March of 2018 was a huge protest and the establishment of the Watch House, which Stacey is such an important part of stewarding and taking care of. And then in April of 2018, Kinder Morgan suspended all non-essential pipeline work, saying that it was the conditions were not possible to go forward and the government of Canada had to do something. A month later, the Canadian government bought the pipeline for billions of taxpayer dollars. And then all that summer, that was May when Canada bought the pipeline, all that summer, people were getting arrested at the tank farm, people stepping up, putting their bodies on the line, trying to stop the tank farm expansion. And that led up to August 2018 court decision quashing the pipeline. The Supreme Court found that Canada had not fulfilled its duty to consult with affected Indigenous nations. And then in June of 2019, Trudeau declared a climate emergency. And in September of 2019, 100,000 people or more marched as part of huge rallies around the world for the Fridays for Future and demanding climate justice now. But again, the National Energy Board recommended building the pipeline again in 2019. And in June 2019, the government of Canada again approved the pipeline after these false consultations led by Frank Iacobucci, who is, if everyone knows, worked very closely with SNC-Lavalin and as a representative of many other big corporations in Canada. And now we've got into COVID for the last year and all the ups and downs of organizing. We were planning on organizing the next big major mobilization among groups against the pipeline when it became obvious. We were in the preparatory meetings when it became obvious we were not allowed to have large gatherings anymore. And it's been really challenging finding ways to keep engaged and keep organizing. But we've continued to, and we've seen Climate Convergence has been around for many years, but you see the emergence of other groups like Protect the Planet, Stop TMX, the 1308 trees, and then you've seen, like Jane said, like normally the Colony Farm Park Association is organizing beginner birdwatching courses at this time, but they're like knee deep in these important protests to protect the park and stop the pipeline. So there's a lot more kind of ups and downs and a lot of other legal wrangling, and that's not a comprehensive thing. It was just kind of what came up to the top of my head when I was thinking, like, there's been so many backs and forths and ups and downs. And the lessons that I draw from that are that we can't take the highs too high, and we definitely can't take the lows too low. We need to celebrate every victory and recognize these things. The fact that 10 years later, we are still like in a position to oppose and to stop the pipeline and it hasn't been built yet. That's a huge victory in itself. But every time we do something legitimate, we make steps forward. We see the Canadian government and its institutions working in every way that they can with corporations to push it through in so many unfair ways. And there's a larger question of like, this pipeline is one part of a larger system based on exploitation and profits at the expense of people and the planet. And until we address that huge or larger question, we're going to have to keep on fighting these things. So I think we've done a really good job of celebrating our victories, but realizing that there still needs to be organizing going on between. And that some days you get 20,000 people out to your protest, and that's amazing, and that's important. And sometimes you get 20 people, and that can be equally important if you're continuing, you're having the continuity of the movement, if you're keeping people engaged, if you're continuing to build organizations and movements, and people are learning how to organize and how to work together. And the same thing, like we've had so many bad news stories, so many times when, despite having governments that are elected promising things, promising climate justice, promising to implement the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, promising to use every tool in the toolbox to stop TMX, declaring climate emergencies. And then we have this National Energy Board, which is supposed to be this impartial judge of energy projects, which is appointed basically almost entirely, it's entirely appointed and almost entirely appointed like people who are from the energy sector, who have maintained connections in the energy sector, who benefit from resource extraction, a completely impartial, neutral body that every time there's a question that comes up, finds in favor of building the pipeline. So we continue having what we call bad news stories, but we keep fighting. And so what I mean, like we can't take the highs too high or the lows too low, is that the answer has always been to keep organizing and to keep fighting and to keep building with each other, no matter if it's good news or no matter if it's bad news. And I think the movement to stop the TMX pipeline has actually done a really good job of staying engaged. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do, but we can't measure our success or what we're doing based solely on whether the pipeline, like what stage the pipeline is, because it's not fair. We're playing on a soccer field like this, and Canadian government and corporations are kicking down the field, and they're using every single unfair institutional power they have to keep this zombie project alive. Whereas if it had been a natural process, this thing would have been long gone if it wasn't for the extraordinary measures that the government and corporations are taking to force this project through. And we are making them make these extraordinary efforts because we are doing extraordinary things together with so few resources, without all this institutional power. This huge billion upon billion dollar Texas oil giant, Kinder Morgan, got up and left. Of course, the government of Canada paid them hundreds of millions of dollars to make up for the fact that they weren't able to get the pipeline built. But they didn't find the conditions possible to build the pipeline, and they left. And that's because people like Stacy, people like Maureen, people like Jane, Tim, Kaya, Kelly, And everybody who's in the chat and so many more have continued fighting and organizing. So I wanted to just kind of take that moment to give it a bit more perspective, because sometimes it's really hard when we're in the moment and when we're actually seeing trees cut down and we're actually seeing pipe on the ground. And things feel drastic because they are, but I think we need to remember that this has been a fight that we've been like really going at and really doing like a good job at. And we need to use all those lessons that we've learned. We're going to need every single lesson we've learned, and every single connection, and every single organization, and every single person, if we're going to have a fighting chance to stop this pipeline as it goes forward. And I totally believe it's possible. And I'm so happy and inspired whenever I come to these things, and you're like, oh, how many people are going to log on? Like, are we going to have a webinar where nobody shows up? But that never happens. There's always interest. There's always engagement. There are always new people. There's always people like Maureen who come out because they get a volunteer email and then now become such an important part of the resistance in Burnaby. Moving on, I get the Trade Talk magazine from the BC Building Trades once a month. And a lot of it is pro-resource extraction, but they've been highlighting the case. I'm not sure if you can see that. And I think it's important because that's Sam Fitzpatrick. He was a rock scaler, 24 years old, that died in 2009 on a Hewitt job site. He was told to go scale rocks with his brother, actually, as part of a construction project in Paw River. And they had the rock face had the day before rocks falling and almost hitting people. And him and his brother said, we don't think this is safe. We shouldn't be working here, but we're still told they needed to go up there. And a rock fell and killed him. And the thing that's important to me is, well, a lot of things, is that Hewitt was eventually found liable and was forced to pay a maximum fine of $250,000 for being responsible for his death. But they appealed that decision and got it lowered to $100,000. And I'm sure they spent more in lawyer fees to make that happen than what they saved as far as the $150,000. And you don't appeal that kind of thing unless you, that individual case, unless you understand that you want to set a precedent and you don't want to have to pay more. And beyond that, the complete moral bankruptcy it takes to be in a position where you're found guilty and to acknowledge your responsibility, but still be arguing over your fine, when at that time they were already being investigated for being involved in 7 other worker deaths. And Hewitt makes tens of millions of dollars every year. And the other important thing is they're one of the prime contractors for the TMX pipeline. And they are the contractor who are on Burnaby Mountain right now, and it was their bulldozer that crushed the leg of the worker. And I looked at when they finally released the small amount of information about what happened. They were saying, well, he wasn't supposed to be there. There's like a work plan, and he wasn't on the work plan, and so that was basically blaming it on him for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But anybody who's worked on construction sites and knows what those work plans are and how shoddy they are and how they're constantly changing and how you're supposed to fill one out for absolutely every single thing that you do, but you do so many things and you're rushed to get things done so often that your ability to write a work plan for every single task that you're being asked to do and rushed to do in this case is impossible. And then you got this contractor using it as an excuse for why their machinery crushed his legs. And total disregard for the humanity. And this is who Trans Mountain's choosing to build their project. And this is who we're up against. And I brought that up because I think it's we're coming more and more face to face with Trans Mountain workers, and that's a really challenging situation for a lot of us. And I think we understand that the Canadian government and the corporations would like nothing more if we think of our fight against the workers as opposed to the corporations. And I think it's hard to always understand that larger picture, but we need to keep that in mind. Of course, there's cases where there's violence being used by Trans Mountain security, and we need to stand up against that and denounce that. But we also need to understand that the overall situation that these people are living in, and that it would be a huge victory for the climate justice movement if we could make more headway with people that are working on these projects, because they're dangerous, because they're deadly, and because people who work on those projects know how little corporations care about their lives and care about the planet, because they see it every day. But many of them are scared. Many of them understand this to be their livelihood, and many of them feel very defensive about their roles in it. But I don't have a complete answer for this question, but it's something that we need to continue to try and manage and to juggle and to keep in mind, that we need to try and win allies wherever we can. And there's space to, because of the relationship these workers have to these projects, and because of the relationship we have to these projects, and because of the common cause we can make in some cases. The last thing I wanted to say is that I think part of why we've been able to continue even in these difficult times is because we've been working to build organizations and really focusing on collaborating together. I think that's why Climate Convergence has had a webinar bi-weekly meeting. Every 2 weeks we meet. And I was really I didn't know how long people are going to last at these Zoom meetings, because the human connection isn't the same. They don't feel the same. It doesn't feel as good. But people keep coming out and keep organizing. And in the first 3 or 4 months when we weren't able to meet, we worked to make these huge 10 banners in little social distance groups, and it took a long time and a lot of coordination, but now these banners get used all the time. And when someone says, I've got a protest coming up, I'm able to say, yeah, I've got 10 banners for you. And when Timothy needs a banner up the tree, we're able to say, yeah, I've got a 16-foot banner that says confront the climate crisis, that you can get up there on the tree. And that's because of the organization, that's because we work together, and that's because of the connections that we're building together. And I think that's also why Protect the Planet Stop TMX has been able to continue organizing, is because they work together and they focus on doing that. And it's not always easy trying to make collective decisions and move together in one force. And they always say, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. But that's a really important lesson that we're learning. And there's so many different organizations doing really important and great work. And I'm asking people, we'd love it if you join Climate Convergence, but all of these organizations are doing worthwhile things and are worth your time, especially right now. So if you're able to, please connect with any organization you can. Now is time to make a difference, and really our efforts are amplified when we work together. The last thing that I wanted to do was read a quote. The last few times I've quoted Martin Luther King Jr. And Berta Cáceres, and Lee Miracle, but this time I'm quoting someone who's a little less inspiring, but I found this to be a really important point. His name is Bill Bryson, and he writes kind of like funny travel logs. He's like a old white guy who kind of has interesting observations about the world. Is not involved in any political struggle. I don't know where he sits politically on any of the spectrums. If you've got an older uncle who's kind of eccentric, he probably has a couple of those books on his shelf. I know my dad's got a few of them. But he wrote a book about just trying to go through the science of Earth and planet and humans. And he went through basically like all of the history of the world and the history of human beings and the biology and the chemistry and the physics that like allowed us all to be here. And for people who kind of struggle with science, it's a really good book, and I'll get you the name, but I have the quote because his conclusion was something that I think we should all take into account. 1 second. He wrote, "If this book has a lesson, it is that we are awfully lucky to be here. And by we, I mean every living thing. To attain any kind of life in this universe of ours appears to be quite an achievement. As humans, we are doubly lucky, of course. We enjoy not only the privilege of existence, but also the singular ability to appreciate it, and even, in a multitude of ways, to make it better. It is a talent we have only barely begun to grasp. We have arrived at this position of eminence in a stunningly short time. Behaviorally modern human beings, that is, people who can speak and make art and organize complex activities, have existed for only about 1,000,000% of Earth's history." Sorry, I'm probably not saying that right. There's a decimal, 4 zeros, and then a 1, whatever that is. But surviving for even that little while has required a nearly endless string of good fortune. We really are at the beginning of it all. The trick, of course, is to make sure we never find the end. And that almost certainly will require a good deal more than lucky breaks. So we're at such an incredible time in history, and we're so lucky to be here. And humans like to be able to live on a planet and grow and evolve to where we are actually technologically and sociologically able to provide everything for everybody, what they need. But also to be on the precipice of some really scary things happening. We cannot rely on luck. We definitely cannot rely on Justin Trudeau or oil corporations. So we need more than luck. We need to work together. We need to educate. We need to organize. We need to mobilize to build a better future. And I think in the Lower Mainland, in Canada, stopping the TMX pipeline is and could be a really fundamental part in making a huge shift towards making that possible. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Thomas. And again, to all of our speakers tonight, there are some excellent questions in the chat while people collect their thoughts, and if the panelists wouldn't mind kind of perusing through the Q&A, I will make a few announcements. The first of which is I encourage people, some have already done it already, but if there's events coming up that I don't announce, please put them in the chat and encourage people to attend. I wanted, first of all, to let people know, because I mentioned it before, Thomas's book, System Change, Not Climate Change, is available, and I will put information for ordering in the chat. Then I will say that the next Climate Convergence meeting, we have them on Wednesdays at 7 o'clock. As Thomas mentioned, for now, they continue to be in Zoom. And so I will put the information in the chat, and you'll also receive an email because you registered for today, just inviting you to come if you'd like to get involved in organizing with Climate Convergence, sharing ideas. And we also kind of have a discussion at the beginning of every meeting about what's happening in the Lower Mainland and also what's happening around the world when it comes to the struggle against the climate crisis. The next Climate Convergence activity is going to be April 7th. It's going to be a banner drop using some of the bigger banners that people have probably seen if you've made it to recent protests. When they are seen in succession, they call out different aspects of the Trans Mountain Pipeline and ask people to question why the project is using so much of taxpayer money, why the ways that it infringes on Indigenous rights, as well as the ways in which it leads to the climate crisis. So there's kind of some big banners that Climate Convergence put together over the summer through many weeks and months probably in order to display them on bridges. And there's some nice bridges in New Westminster on McBride Avenue that are pedestrian bridges that we were going to gather together to continue to build awareness here in the Lower Mainland about the pipeline construction, as well as what people can do to get involved. We've also, Climate Convergence, a wonderful artist named Jess has recently designed these buttons and stickers. You've probably seen them. If you would like some, then just get a hold of us on social media, or I'll put our email in the chat and we can get some buttons and stickers to you, so we can keep really bringing the message of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion into the streets and into, hopefully, as the saying goes, everyone's dinner table. Really, this needs to be a discussion on everyone's mind if there is a next election and when there is, and also just part of our kind of making it part of people's everyday lives, that they realize that this pipeline is being built and the destruction that it will cause. And that will help us in building the mass movement that we will need to stop this project. So those are my announcements for now. Again, I said, if you'd like, please put in the chat any other information for upcoming events and how people can get involved. And I will go ahead and go to the questions. So the first question we'll go ahead and read is, what should we do during a federal election campaign to put pressure on all the politicians to stop Trans Mountain expansion pipeline and get serious about the environment? Can we identify politicians who deserve support for seriously opposing TMX and are serious about global warming? And that comes from Paul. Thank you, Paul. I think I saw earlier that Tim, who was helping out Maureen early, would like to discuss some of this, but if any of the other panelists would like to say anything, let me know. Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just be brief, and thank you everyone for attending and the marvelous contributions. So unfortunately, there are very few. And I would say definitively that Elizabeth May is one of them. And she has been very consistently strong throughout, but of course the Greens have very little power. So my opinion on this is that the pressure point is Jagmeet Singh. And the reason I say that is because his party is technically opposed to the project, but he is deafeningly silent, even when his own constituents are injured on his riding and harassed in his riding by TMX security. So Jagmeet needs to hear from his constituents in particular about his silence. Now, his deputy minister, Peter Julian, has been to both tree sits. He's been very vocal about the budget issues, and I mentioned in the chat about the Canadian Development Corporation, which is hiding the spending for TMX in Canada's largest slush fund ever. And so Peter deserves our support, but he also has to be pushed on his leader, because the leader, as I said, is deafeningly silent. Otherwise, one of the things that Trudeau is trying to do is make Jason Kenney be the bad guy on climate change, and he is the good guy. So you'll notice my links now always say the Kenney Trudeau pipeline, because there is no space appreciably between Kenney and Trudeau on this pipeline. And Trudeau is trying to pretend like there is. So make him pay for that. He, in particular, needs to wear the Trans Mountain Pipeline to the climate summit with Joe Biden on April 22nd. This is an important watershed event. It's Earth Day of all things. And Trudeau must pay by wearing the Trans Mountain Pipeline, the Kenny Trudeau pipeline, to that meeting. And I think that's an important pressure point in the near future.
Thank you, Tim. Tim Takara, I will say, also from Protect the Planet, Stop TMX. Thank you. Anyone else want to address the issue of elections, possible impending elections, or the last elections? We've been through, I would say, without looking up, 2 or 3 federal elections with TMX on the docket, on the plan to go forward, and seen many promises broken, I think. Anything else? The other questions so far have to do with mobilizing unions and union members, and if anyone has comments about working, especially reaching out to unions representing members in the oil industry or involved in pipeline construction.
I can talk about this maybe in my wrap-up comments. I'd like to hear a bit more from some of the other speakers. I think I spoke longer than they did.
Sounds good. If anyone has anything else they would like to reply to that just kind of came in discussion, that's good as well. I will just clarify, there was a question earlier, I don't know if everyone saw it. It said, did TMX change the route so it no longer goes past the Stony Creek fish habitat protection area? And Maureen clarified that it moved to avoid a few large cedars, but it is now actually more damaging to the fish habitat than it was, which I think just goes to show that it's when they make these moves or they change their route, they may be responding to some public pressure, but they're still not interested in protecting the environment through anything that they do. They're just trying to hide more of their tricky ways. All right. And there's been some discussion in the chat kind of about reaching out to workers and industry. I know in Climate Convergence, it's been important for us to emphasize as well, and really to work to expose the ways that these same oil and gas companies, Trans Mountain, the tar sands, the ways that they in fact exploit workers and don't care about them. I think a really good example is what's happened in Alberta. Alberta poured a bunch of money in the middle of COVID into the KXL pipeline construction, saying it would so-called bring jobs and boost the economy at a time when people were staying home and people needed basic support for food, for health needs, and frontline workers needed PPE, let alone people that live in crisis all the time in Canada due to poverty and racism. And I think that really that shows where the interests of the government of Alberta lie. When you take apart the claims for jobs, they really fall apart because of how much it's really like fairy wishing that this pipeline will bring this job, will bring, open 12 restaurants, which will employ hundreds of people who will then, create this other job. It's really all smoke and mirrors, and it's destroying the planet. So I think we really have to, as a climate justice movement, take that head on when it comes to this so-called jobs argument, or that these pipelines are somehow good for workers and working people. Okay, well, if there's no kind of direct responses, thank you for giving me space to share as a chair. It's not necessarily my position to do so, but I did. And I will just see if we can kind of wrap up in succession, and any final comments from any of the speakers. Again, if anyone wants to share anything in the chat, please do. And we will continue fighting in all the different ways that we can. Most importantly, uniting our work as we continue to build a movement that is capable of stopping the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I'll just go in the order that we presented, if that's okay with everyone. So Stacy, that means you're up if you have anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, Chimigwich, get you want to do it. Just a few short words, my dear relatives. I'm so lifted that we're all here together today and we're all safe. I know that this Saturday at noon at City Hall, there's going to be a gathering, and you can bring those beautiful buttons with you with Extinction Rebellion Vancouver. But I need to remind myself that I don't have a choice in these matters, and that I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. But how am I to sustain myself in doing this? And I know of a thing for me that's called self-love. Some call it self-care. I'm going right to love on this one. Self-love, and how I take care of myself. And that means I use the very simplest things. I use my medicines, and I, go out into the forest and sit near the tree, especially that tree of life, that cedar tree, and things like that. Sometimes I may have to just step aside, never backwards. So in order for me to come in fresher, so that I can move forward with all these things. So I would just ask if you or to invite yourselves to look at that self-care. If you feel like you're burning out in the first week of this, talk to an elder, talk to your minister, talk to a tree, talk to a hummingbird, talk to a red-legged frog. Go out into nature and use those simple medicines, and please take care of yourself. I left my phone number earlier, and if there's anything that anybody would like to talk about, I don't have the lottery numbers. I'm not mystical or nothing. So I would just like to say thank you to Kelly again for that song. It really touched myself and the other panelists, and even Thomas. Thanks, Thomas. Okay, we'll talk soon, guys.
Thank you. So next, Kaya, you had anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you. It was really good to hear from all of you. And I'm gonna leave here thinking really deeply. And I guess the final comment I would say is I hear a lot of these issues are symptoms of like capitalism and capitalistic greed. And when we think of solutions, this is my opinion, and this is what I was what I hold really deeply in my heart, is that sacred and natural law are the antithesis of capitalistic greed. And yeah, I want to thank you all for hearing me, and I learned a lot tonight, and thank you for sharing all of what you do, and thank you to all those out there who come in support. And it's a really beautiful thing seeing the community, and what Stacy said is really true. One of the best parts I think about this movement is the community around it. And thank you. So good night.
Good night. Thank you. Maureen?
Hi. I don't have a lot more to say. I think it's all been said very well. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is that, as Stacey was saying, there are people who do not have a choice about being in this fight. It is brought to them, whether they want to or not. And I want to take a moment to honor all the missing and murdered Indigenous women and Two-Spirit and girls, because they did not choose to be dragged into this. And we know that that violence is continuing, and it is on the doorstep of everybody who has been a part of this. And we need to keep reminding our politicians that the choices they're making are actually killing people here and elsewhere. And we don't want to be a part of murder anymore. It has gone on too long. It's a cycle of violence that needs to be broken, and continuing on as we have has cost already so much. No more. There has to be that line drawn. It's a red line somewhere. Just we need to draw it, and we need to start walking backwards. And please, you know, every time you can get that message out to people and convince them that we can do this. We just need to work together. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Jane, I don't know if there's anything else you want to share. I think you're.
I want to say thanks so much to everyone, especially all the support we received on March 7th and before and now, because it's not something that, you know,
Mom, he feeds it.
I don't really know this role all of a sudden. I think a lot of us are thrown into to sort of lead a movement in our area, and without meeting this group and beyond, it would be very difficult, but it's so inspiring. And I just wanted to mention, in 2007, I worked on the rehabilitating some of the oiled wildlife from the spill in Burnaby. And it was obviously an unforgettable and very depressing experience. And I always think of just the wildlife who are, you know, so voiceless in all of this. And we still have no legislation, no funding, no professionals, no equipment for oiled wildlife rehabilitation. And we didn't before, and we don't now. And so just for that alone, we're going to do everything we can to stop this. And thanks again, everyone, and have a great night. And say bye.
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 Bye. Thank you, Jane. All right, Thomas, you are up next.
Yeah, I'd get my kid to come say bye too, but he's taller than me now and definitely not sitting on my lap, and definitely busy playing Fortnite right now. Maureen can relate. I just wanted to, I saw Kaya speak last Friday at the Sustainability event in front of the Ministry of Environment office, the federal one at Burrard and Dunsmuir, downtown Vancouver. And she spoke really clearly and powerfully about the difference in policing that Indigenous people suffer. The difference between when Indigenous youth are inside of the lobby of a TMX insurer, and the violence and over-policing they face there, and the brutality, versus the lack of police and investigation when it comes to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And it was a really strong and poignant point, I think, that like these differences in priorities and force and resources, and that the RCMP refuses to release how much funding actually they put towards investigating missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, are not accidental. And we've seen the biggest militarization and uses of force in contemporary Canadian history when Indigenous people stand up. In Oka in 1990, when they were trying to stop the golf course from being built on a sacred burial ground, and they had not just the provincial police, but the military. In Gustafson Lake, every time we see this like disproportionate use of force, which Indigenous people suffer when asserting their rights to self-determination, especially. And I think that Kaya did a really good job of highlighting that, and it's something we need to understand, that it's a really key vulnerability to Canada, because they talk about rights, and they talk about treaties, and they talk about respect, and they talk about now the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, but the foundation of the wealth and of the corporate powers of this country are based on the theft of Indigenous land. And so they're really touchy about trying to make sure that there's no uprisings and there's no examples. But like we saw in Standing Rock, when non-Indigenous people begin to realize, to understand how important supporting Indigenous people and their right to self-determination is, we can see some really powerful and exciting movements. And I think we've seen that at times in the fight to stop the TMX pipeline. The last thing I wanted to say is about workers and about kind of involving unions. Like there's been some I don't think we can forget that the union local representing the refinery workers at the Chevron refinery in Burnaby opposed the Kinder Morgan pipeline when it was first announced, because they understood that the oil isn't even going to be refined in Canada. It just gets transported outside because they get super profits from transporting it directly. They make money, but not as much money from refining it. So the local was opposed to it. And in the case of when the BC government announced that it was going to go ahead with Site C, the BC government employees union spoke out against it. And we've also had people like Violet, who was in who's with us today in the chat and who's participated in many of our events from the BCTF and is an executive member of the BCTF and support from the teachers union for this struggle. Like there are times and there are places and there are possibilities. We just need to always be open and always be pushing for them, even when they don't always bear fruit. The last kind of thing I'll say is I've got two cousins that live in Edmonton. One of them, her husband works in the refinery, one of the refineries outside Edmonton, and the other one, he works on the oil rigs. And communicating with them and watching their kind of progression over the past 3 years especially has been really interesting. They both 100% support oil and gas, 100% supported Jason Kenney, 100% against the NDP, like anything even resembling anything progressive on this issue specifically, on oil and gas. Even the NDP's support was not enough for them. But over the last year, watching Jason Kenney do these things like invest billions of dollars in a pipeline that didn't get built, and totally botch the COVID recovery. One cousin has become a lot more critical, and she's open to conversations, whereas before she would just tell me, well, I think I'll do a little more investigating about climate change. I'm not sure if I understand that enough to be able to have an opinion about it. To now really being frustrated and denouncing the Kenney government, and being open to other conversations because of that, because she's seen that like this kind of goes hand in hand, the like complete reckless disregard for humanity and for like regular poor and working people goes hand in hand with this like immense support for the oil and gas industry. So there's possibilities with her. Meanwhile, my other cousin has totally doubled down on his support for everything oil and gas and isn't interested in reason, isn't interested in talking about it. He'll find any excuse he can to support it. Even things I know he must know are ridiculous. Like, it is what it is. But I'm saying, well, what I'm just trying to highlight is like the situation is objective and it'll affect different people in different ways. And we're not going to be able to reach every single person with our message, no matter how awesome and how great our messaging is. But there's people who are being critical and waking up because of the realities of their lives. And there's more than enough of them that we can focus on communicate with and build alliances with and be there when there's questions and be there in a non-judgmental and be there in a truthful, in a loving and compassionate and sometimes like forceful way. But we can be an example. And I think there's lots of possibilities for connecting with poor and working people. And that's the exciting thing, is that we have done so much with the section of the population that is engaged and active and already cares about this issue. If we're able to bring in these other people who, through the reality of their lives and seeing the destruction around them and how it affects their livelihoods, we have a lot of potential for new allies and for growing the movement to stop the pipeline.
Thank you, Thomas. And thank you again from Climate Convergence Metro Vancouver for everyone joining here tonight, giving time on your evening to talk about building a more united and stronger fight back against Trans Mountain pipeline and expansion throughout the Lower Mainland. definitely want to remind people that this resistance spreads beyond the Lower Mainland. People are fighting on Coquitlam territory, especially, that we must keep in close connection with, and also just across the entire pipeline route all the way to the tar sands themselves in Alberta. And as well, I mentioned earlier, but the important struggles against the Line 3 and Line 5 pipelines, which continue to be in various parts of construction, but also continued resistance, as well as the Dakota Access Pipeline. We have to unite across this US-Canada border and beyond to really wage an effective struggle for the planet and for the future of humanity. I think especially without KXL pipeline to count on to squeeze that last bit of tar sands mega profits out, there's a lot more pressure on the government of Canada to push through with TMX. There's a lot more reasons why they might double down on needing to construct this disastrous pipeline, and our resistance also has to respond to that. And I think that every united struggle we wage in defense of Mother Earth is really an important opportunity to expand and broaden the climate justice movement. We must not only expose the lies of the government of Canada and the United States and their billionaire backers in the oil and gas industry, we must take action to really demand that Indigenous rights be respected and that the needs of people are put before that of pipelines and profits. And to this end, we have no other option than to build a sustained and consistent movement for climate justice and Indigenous rights. Building collectively, creatively, and effectively together to fight for system change, not climate change, is more necessary than ever before. And every time we have a panel like this, I am reminded of the urgency, but also the ability that we have to work together to build this fight back. Capitalism is pushing our Mother Earth to extinction, and we have to work every day to combat against that. And I do believe that we will win. So encourage everyone to copy the chat if you haven't had a chance. We'll send a follow-up email. Come to the next Climate Convergence meeting next Wednesday. And I just wanted to ask Kelly White if there was anything you wanted to say at the end, or if you would like to close with a song.
Thank you so much, Haitskasi. I'm grateful to hear all the experiences and the sharing of knowledge. Can you hear me, Allison?
I can.
Oh, thankful for everyone, right from youth to elderly, men and women sharing the honor of knowledge today, this evening. Grateful that people are blessed to become involved in movements to protect those that don't have words or voice to defend themselves. I'm grateful that I didn't know about most of the movements out there this evening. I feel like a fossil, like an artifact sitting in the corner. Hadn't heard this good news for so long. Thank you everyone for participating the way you do out there. I feel like that little bit of knowledge helped me come out of my fossil age and enthusiastic to support petitions out there and active movements ongoing. And the spirit of those that are having upcoming gatherings, thank you so much for continuing the plight to create a semblance of justice for all life. And in the spirit of family and brothers and sisters helping one another, Uncle share a song from my dad's cousin. My dad's, I was born in a trial, my mom and dad's trial for hunting and fishing rights in the 50s. And all my 3 girls were born in a trial, fighting for rights, for justice. And I'm not even 190 yet. And all 3 of my girls have been in trials. My grandson is 30 now. He was born in a trial. for the rights of sacred bundles. And I'm honored to have 3 girls myself. And, you know, I understand you when, you know, the speakers say it's not your choice or option to, you know, just stand by and let everything go on. And since I was a teenager, having babies kicked out of my belly by officers upholding the law, and been shot at by most of the police forces in the continent. Just, you know, trying to find out what's going on, and how come we're so aggressively brown that you know, it was okay to get shot at and stalked by all levels of government. Even though I'm great honor to have 3 girls, grandchildren and great grandchildren, I didn't have the honor to meet my grandparents or great grandparents. There's so much onslaught against our families just for being aggressively brown. So Creator blessed. And so I'm thankful for the knowledge that is being shared out there today, this evening. And especially grateful for the movements that are going on, respecting the lives that are past and those ones that are here and living and in the future of living. I couldn't keep my mouth shut or clam up or, you know, remain silent either. And I'm not sorry, I'm not mad, or, you know, the penalty of being out there since being a kid. I had twins kicked out of my belly twice in Frontline, and I had a hole in my head when I was 16 when we went to Parliament, and the Queen of the alleged leader of the colonies had confirmed to meet with us and to hear our concerns of 30 youth in the 70s. Then we got there with our support groups of 2,000 people strong. And then we were forced to, in front of the police barricades, logs that came at us and, you know, cracked our heads open and lots of stitches. A lot of us wouldn't go for stitches or medical help, just, I don't know, grudge or whatever, like we'll heal on our own. So I would have 10 children today, and I celebrate having 3. And I really believe that the Creator looks after us in the life here. You know, rather, even if we're living and just wanting to get by, or active in helping brothers and sisters and one another to get by, and in appreciation of all life. We're taught that the eagles take our messages, and that nobody flies higher than the eagle taking those messages. So I'm grateful that the eagle has landed on the speakers this evening, that those messages could come out, and that that we're carrying those messages on the back of the eagles this evening. So in regard to my dad's families that brought 196 chiefs together, and it was banned since the 1880s, and they brought the leadership together for first time in 80 years in 1950s for hunting and fishing case. And so I was born in a trial too, my mom and dad's trials. So I anticipate a good life, that you all don't have to be on trial for your whole life, because I'm sure the Creator made us a place to live without being attacked. And I know I feel you this evening, the speakers. It's not the money, you know, I really feel you, that the heart and soul of your work, the mind, body, and activities that you're peacefully waging, and in prayers and in vigils to put a good light on the sacredness of life. So my dad's northern cousins are from Haida Gwaii, and I learned this song with the Frontlines in the 70s, and I thank you all and invite you to share this song forever. And it's a song of Haida Gwaii from the Eagles. I'm thankful for all of your messages that the Eagles flew on your backs to carry your messages, and the hardships or the goodness that gave you these messages to share with us this evening, and the best to your families and your communities that lent us, you know, you could be with us this evening instead of them. So, well, with us anyway, still. I showed a star quilt earlier. That's what I was working on this evening, listening to the speakers, and those star quilts are for the murdered people, red and purple. Since 40 years, we made them for the murdered people, and I dedicate this to the ones murdered by the pipelines. The eagle had a glass on. The four-legged winged crawlers of the earth that bring us to the sacred of life. Thankful for the messengers this evening, those ones that were gifted their knowledge on the panel to share the knowledge with us this evening. And Creator, we're thankful. The panelists' families be blessed this evening, and that the knowledge that they share will be fruitful amongst all those that joined us this evening, and grateful to brothers and sisters showing heart and soul, helping one another. Helping all life, Creator of all good, to take this pipeline and leave it alone, and leave the oil, the veins of the earth, sacred as they are, in the good of all life, in the highest of the honor, healing our nations of united resistance to the war on all life. Strength to our relatives. All my relations, thank you. See you next time.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kelly. And we will see you on the streets or online, whatever our capacity lets us do. We will continue fighting. Thank you.
Good night, you rascals.
That's better ending than I got.